Hey, how you doing today? Today, I'm making a video discussing the 2017 Women's College Lacrosse Division 1 tournament. The tournament has been going on for a couple of weeks now, and this coming weekend, starting tomorrow, Friday, May the 26th, is the Final Four, and the two semifinals will be tomorrow, Friday, and then the final will be Sunday. Before I discuss the tournament so far, I wanted to mention a few uh, items regarding the Final Four. The first thing is that, as I mentioned, the two games will be played tomorrow in Boston, where the Patriots play. Uh, the New England Patriots of the NFL. The two games tomorrow. The first game starts at 5, and the second game starts at 7:30. They are on the Watch ESPN app. I do not believe they're on TV anywhere. So if you want to watch them, you can either go to watchespn.com, just Google Watch ESPN, and it will be there. And you can also, if you have either like a Roku or other streaming projector app, if you prefer to watch it on your TV, you can project it. You can do that with the Watch ESPN app, and then the game on Sunday, from what I understand, will be on ESPNU. I wish that the two semifinal games were on TV as well, but as I mentioned, because they're on the Watch ESPN app, you can either just watch them on a computer, desktop, or of course, if you have the power, you can project it onto a TV. So in terms of the teams themselves, um, the four Final Four teams at the top of the bracket, we have the one seed Maryland will play the four seed Penn State, and that's the early game tomorrow. That's the 5 o'clock game. Then two one seeded teams are on the bottom half of the draw. So we have unseeded Boston College versus unseeded Navy. Both of these matchups are really exciting for a bunch of different reasons. All four teams are deserving to be here. Um, but they are different matchups, and that's what I kind of want to get into. So, in terms of the recap, before I get into the preview of these two games, what I'll do is I'll use the four teams that have gotten to this point as kind of the guides to look back. So, if you start at the top, the one seed Maryland, they came into this tournament as the only undefeated team. Um, as I mentioned, they were given the one seed deservingly. Um, in the They have played their games in College Park as part of the the way that the lacrosse tournament does their early rounds. The higher, whoever has that higher seed hosts their regional bracket. Um, they played High Point in one, and then that was in the second round, but that was their first game because they had the bye. And in the quarterfinals, the last round, they had one of the most exciting games of the tournament so far. They played the 8 seed Stony Brook, a Stony Brook team that came into that game with only one loss. And I have been really high on this Stony Brook team, and that was a great game. Stony Brook led almost the whole game. Stony Brook played awesome. If you were not able to either go to that game or watch it, Stony Brook, I cannot praise them enough on how they played. They gave Maryland everything they could handle. Maryland was pushed to the brink, absolute brink. Stony Brook had a couple of different four-goal leads, including a four-goal lead in the second half, and give credit to Maryland for battling back. I did want to make just a big note of giving so much congratulations to Stony Brook, not only on a terrific game, but on a great season. In some ways, to be honest, they almost really deserved to win that game. I think that in a lot of ways they outplayed Maryland. Um, I don't want to take anything away from Maryland, and I don't like to criticize officials, and I'm not going to here. I would just point out, though, that in this game, Stony Brook had 4 yellow cards against them compared to none for Maryland. And if you do the math on that, a yellow card is 2 minutes or until there's a goal and it's released. So if you do the math, that's 8 minutes out of 60 that Stony Brook was down a player. So, and Maryland didn't have one yellow card. Okay, that is what it is. You could watch the tape if you wanted to and see if they were justified. I don't like to spend too much time on calls unless they're really controversial. I did just want to mention that though. I mean, look, it's worth mentioning. these things are part of the game and you have to mention them. So for Stony Brook, a part of me really wishes that they made the Final Four because I think that they deserved it. They had such a good year and played so well in that game. For Maryland, this is a team that has a ton of talent. I think everyone knows that. From goalie all the way up to their attackers, they just have studs at all three phases. But they will have to play better if they're going to beat Penn State, and then ultimately if they want to win back the national championship, I think that they will have to raise their game a little bit, and I think that they will. I think it's fair to say. And as I mentioned, I don't think that they necessarily played poorly in that game. I think Stony Brook really took it to them a little bit. So moving down, so they're the first. They're at the top of the bracket here in the Final Four. Then moving down, as I mentioned, they're playing the 4 seed Penn State. Penn State defeated Princeton in another incredible game. That was the 4 versus the 5 seed. That game was played at Penn State's home field in State College. That was a rematch of a game played earlier in the year, and this was another tremendous game. It was not decided until really the final minute of the game. It went back and forth, really a bunch of swings and momentum. This is another one where I would just give credit to both teams. They played really well. For Princeton, they had a great year. I thought that the Ivy League overall was really strong this year. I've mentioned that in a previous video. And they really came to play. Penn State, this is another team with a ton of talent, a ton of really talented players. That it's another team that's really balanced in terms of they can score, they win possession in the circle, they and then they can play defense and they get good play from their goalie as well. In terms of their road, in their first game, which was again the second round because they were another team with the bye, they played James Madison, and that was a really good game. James Madison really came to play in that game, and JMU was a team that I really liked, and they really, I think they impressed everybody that saw them play in that game. So that's the semifinal matchup. A quick preview of that game, which will, as I mentioned, will be played tomorrow. This is another rematch. These teams are both in the Big Ten Conference, and they know each other real well. They're fairly close geographically. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of secrets in this game. In terms of keys, I think, as with so many lacrosse games, it's going to be, who wins the draw. Can either goalie make a high percentage of her saves? And then, as I mentioned, will Maryland raise their play? So that'll just 5 o'clock tomorrow, I believe. As I mentioned on the Watch ESPN app, ESPN3. Again, though, this game is not technically on TV, but you can stream it if you're not heading up to Boston. So then moving down to the bottom half of the bracket, this is where we had some chaos. If the top was a little chalky, there was some serious chaos on this bottom half of the bracket. The top 2 seeds here were the 3rd seed Florida Gators, a tremendously talented team, and the 2nd seed was the defending champion North Carolina Tar Heels, who I think a lot of people expected them to not only make the Final Four, but potentially defend their title, and neither of them are going to be playing this weekend, and I think for me and most people who follow this, that's very shocking. The 2 teams that will be playing and are very deserving to be playing are Boston College and Navy, 2 tremendous stories, and I think it's very exciting that they're playing each other. For Boston College, of course, they're playing in their home city, in Boston, as I mentioned, and that's really exciting for them. That's a unique opportunity. They came into this, they're an ACC team, but they came into this tournament unseeded, and they played Syracuse and they beat them. And then if seeds held, they would have played Florida, but they wound up playing USC, Southern California, who had upset Florida in the previous round, and give USC a lot of credit for that. That's a really impressive win, going down to Gainesville from USC and winning that game. Um, and Boston College, then took care of USC, and that's how they got here. I think that they're going to be really fired up to be playing in Boston. This is a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to play in a Final Four in your hometown. So that's really exciting for the Eagles. And as I mentioned, they'll be playing Navy, the midshipmen, another team that was unseeded coming into this tournament. I don't think a lot of people they had a really nice regular season, 15-4. That's a nice record. They come out of the Patriot League. This is a team I was able to see them actually in their first two games in person. They defeated the 7 seed Penn in that first upset on Penn's field, and then after that game, and that was a really close game. That was they won that game by 1 goal, and then they came back in the next round and beat UMass a little more convincingly. A good UMass team, by the way. Navy, in those two games before I get to their quarterfinal game, I was really impressed with them. They play. One thing that stuck out for me with them was how together they play as a team. Not just in terms of like chemistry, but actually the lacrosse. They clear the ball well. They, I think the biggest thing for me was how aggressive and physical they were off the draw and on ground balls. That was the key in their 2 wins, I thought, in those 2 early wins. They really sort of asserted themselves physically, and it worked. And then they got to the quarterfinals, and I don't think many people expected them to get to the quarterfinals. And then from there, I don't think anyone expected them to go down the Chapel Hill and beat the defending champion, and they did. Another very, very close game. I think it's fair to say that UNC is the more talented team. I think most people would agree with that, but you just have to give Navy so much credit for believing in themselves. How many teams would go into Chapel Hill, as I mentioned, and have that mentality that we can win this game. And that was not an easy game for them. There were, UNC came to play, but Navy pulled it out. So now they're in their first ever women's lacrosse Final Four, and they're playing Boston College, who was also in their first ever Final Four. So that's a really exciting semifinal. That will take place at 7:30. So that's it. That's your Final Four. Maryland, Penn State at the top, and then on the bottom, Navy, Boston College, or Boston College, Navy. It's been an awesome tournament so far. Hopefully we get some exciting semifinals, and then whatever the matchup is, I think in the final, I think it'll be a great game. I think no matter how it works out between the 4 teams, I think we're in for a great final as well. So good luck to all 4 of those teams. To the teams that have got knocked out, they all had great seasons. In a tournament, knockouts tournament like this, someone's got to win and move on. And the flip side of that is someone's gonna have their season ended. It's just the way it works. But that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes these tournaments exciting. It's tough when you lose, but these single elimination games are just tournaments are just so much fun. And especially when you have upsets, number 1, and number 2, close games. That's really the ingredient for an awesome tournament. So thank you for watching this video. The games will be played tomorrow, the 2 semifinals, and the final on Monday. So enjoy it, and hopefully I'll be back after the final on Sunday and can recap it a little bit and discuss the winner.